Well, there's been a lot made of the Nick Saban Jimbo Fisher fiasco. And Kirby touched on that this week in Destin during SEC spring meetings. He said, to be honest with you, my phone started blowing up right away when Jimbo had his press conference, and I haven't thought about it a day since because the world we operate, if you're worried about what's in front of you, yada, 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 look, these coaches are incessant gossips. I know they're talking to each other. To now, I don't know if they're talking, like if Nick and Kirby and Jimbo are talking to one another, but they are all talking. Um, let me assure you of that. It's just what this these guys have a lot in common, and that has been I'm sure source of conversation, not the primary source of conversation. He's right. There's a lot more to do. He said, uh, you're worried about what's in front of you right now, which is the 15 recruits I'm trying to get on the phone, the conversations I'm trying to have. I'm not really worried about a feud between guys that used to sit in the same staff meeting and have similar conversations, which is to suggest that these two have fought some in the past. He goes on to say, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes things get heated. I'd rather it not be in the public arena, but at the end of the day, things like that happen. I mean, you guys should be on the headphones sometime. You think the back and forth, you think that the back and forth between Nick and Jimbo, it was Mickey Mouse. It just so happened in front of everybody. It's not something I prefer to comment on, to be honest with you. Well, but he did comment on it. But anyway, I think, there's so many people in the league have in some form or fashion, worked with or for Nick Saban by now. And, Jimbo, Muschamp, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, you've Jeremy Pruitt, you've had a lot of folks in the league that have gone on from working with Nick in some fashion to working on their own as head coaches. Obviously, Will, Kirby, Jimbo are great examples. And maybe they just know the way that Nick is, and this is just sort of a common thing that he says what it is sometimes. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when he was calling agents pimps at SEC media days. I mean, there's reasons why Nick Saban does what he does. That's my point. And if Jimbo is extremely excited and exacerbated by it because of the term, I think, bought, that they bought these players, which is, you know, I guess fighting words. But for Kirby, I'm sure this is entertaining for everybody that's not at Texas A&M or Alabama because it's so stupid. I mean, in many ways, like, everybody knows that this is going on to some degree at all of it. Every institution is dealing with NIL, every single one of them. Um, and that this caused such a big uh, fight. I left Lane Kiffin out, but he came in off the top rope on Texas A&M earlier this year himself. And maybe part of this is that Jimbo feels like the Aggies are getting beat up on. Maybe this is that there's an aggravation dealing with Nick specifically. Although his reaction to Lane Kiffin was pretty serious as well. Or maybe this just bothers Jimbo more than it should. I mean, I think that's part of it at a minimum, is that this is something that's bothering Jimbo. I, I don't know why it would bother him that much. To say the part about buying players, I mean, I'm not sure if anybody in the league should really be lecturing anybody else about this topic. Um, that's my statement about that. I'm not sure anybody in the SEC should really be lecturing anyone else about the acquisition of college football prospects. That's what I would say. So maybe that's why Jimbo's fired up. He insinuated a lot of different stuff, but I mean, the funny thing to me is Kirby talking about how important it is for his team to, or his group to be focused on what they're focused on, and the conversations on the headsets, which is what I want to hear. Which nobody ever, we don't really have an easy way to get a hold of that. I mean, Kirby's halftime speeches are some of the most epic, things that get out there, and I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of about that. I've been on college teams. That discussion is not abnormal coming from your coach. Um, Typically, it's they're being proud of you and what you've accomplished. There's also some moments where they're not so proud of you and they're pretty angry with you. Um, but stuff slips out, and maybe Nick didn't say that the right way. I think that's certainly part of this. I also think that he's there's maybe some truth to this too, in that people are paying attention to what Texas A&M is doing, uh, in a way that they paid attention to what Ole Miss did back when Hugh Freeze was there, because when you don't have a track record of pulling in that many guys, there is going to be a radar that pops up and says, well, what's going on here? What's going on here? Well, people said that about Kirby forever. I mean, that's not new for him. Maybe what's going on here is that Jimbo's aggravated that Nick won't criticize his boys, but he'll criticize him. Maybe there's an aggravation at Texas A&M, which feeds into what they're kind of like with their sensitivity levels. And maybe they're overly sensitive about this particular topic for no reason or for many reasons. Maybe it's that Jimbo's had enough of Nick. I don't know. But hey, listen, make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. There's no easy segue in this one. Make sure you're picking up down below. There's Kirby. We've been talking about Kirby a little bit. And Kirby's had a lot of success against former Saban folks himself. Um, uh, there's not as many of them out there anymore, but a couple wins over Jeremy Pruitt, the wins over Jimbo, the win over Jimbo. Kirby's had a lot of success, and there's no one in college football that more associates by default, I guess, with Nick Saban than Kirby Smart. It is although these guys didn't win national championship, I don't think Bo Schembechler ever won a national championship. Someone can correct me, but it is a bit of Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, in that one learned from the other for an extended period of time. I don't know if we've heard the end of this. Meetings down in Destin are still going on. It is a fun, you know, sideshow, but if Texas A&M doesn't get to Atlanta this year or next year, people will hold this against Jimbo. They will hold this outburst against him, and they will hold that class against him. That's what happens. And that will be a bigger worry than anything that ever happened with this Nick Saban stuff.